Hello, everyone. Today we are talking about how the NRA is seemingly once again supporting gun control. Now, for those of you that are new here, that might come as a shock to you, but for those of you that have been around a while, this might not be as surprising. The article that I'm going to be reading to you today comes from America's First Freedom, which is a NRA magazine that you can get if you're a member. It's a pretty decent article in many ways. However, the way they present it and a few of the paragraphs in it just don't really jive right with me. I don't know if that's the right word to describe it, but it ain't my cup of tea. Now, we're going to talk about the specifics of it, but let's just get right into it and we will start talking. So if we look at the title here, now this is kind of cropped because I wanted to move it off the screen a little bit so you can see my ugly face just a little bit better. Chief James Craig explains why enforcing gun laws actually works. Thank you, NRA, for being the biggest gun rights organization who is on the front page of their publications talking about gun laws good. Thanks. So let's actually talk about it because this article isn't terrible in a lot of aspects and a lot of what it says in it. But I think there's just a few points that I have a big issue with, and then some things that don't quite really it doesn't really work together. It seems kind of contradictory in some of the things they're saying. So if we skip to page 32 here, here's when it actually starts. Now, targeting the real problem. And then it talks about how, it spends a little bit talking about how in Detroit, this police chief has been kind of dealing with a tough time, how crime is going up. One of the big things they talk about how, Detroit, Michigan, has a lot of crime going on, and that's a pretty big issue that they have been trying to crack down upon. President Biden began demanding Congress expand background checks to, among other things, to stop people from loaning guns to friends, trying out another person's gun at a range, or selling or giving a gun to a friend, family member, or even another private citizen. This universal background check idea could only be theoretically enforced if the federal government somehow had a national gun registry scheme in place. If universal background checks were ever passed by Congress and signed by a president, a national gun registry would be the next thing politicians like Biden would be demanding. This is something we've talked about a lot in the past, how you can't actually have these universal background checks truly work or have any effect whatsoever unless you can know where every single firearm that's currently in the nation is. And you're never going to know that, especially now that firearms can be easily made by any private citizen. So what's up in Detroit? As already noted, Detroit is no stranger to challenges. In 2013, the city became the largest municipal government ever to declare bankruptcy, cutting tens of millions of dollars in law enforcement funding. The city has been plagued by joblessness, corruption. It goes on to talk about how the pandemic made everything even worse and how they saw a huge surge in crime in 2020. But then one thing that they do mention later in this article is how in many cities across the nation, there was a huge spike in crime. And Detroit, while it also saw a spike in crime, it was not proportional to the massive change relative to the current or the previous crime rates that we saw in many other cities, which I think is not really fair to compare when you are comparing cities that were relatively peaceful and then it has like 3 crimes more. That might be 50% increase, whereas a city that's already dangerous every single year, no matter what it seems, has a little bit more crime. It could have 10 more crimes, but that might be a smaller percentage, so it's not quite fair to compare them directly. In response, led by now former police chief James Craig and other officials in Detroit, the city began a multifaceted attack on crime in the city. This is really where it gets interesting. The department is partnering with the ATF to monitor some social media accounts to catch convicted felons trying to purchase firearms. Remember the previous video we talked about guns and weed and how one rapper was arrested? They mentioned there that the ATF had been monitoring social media accounts. So when people make jokes about, oh, I bet my FBI agent is laughing at this, might not be so untrue. They've deployed technology that helps detect gunshots. In the first few weeks it was used, the tech helped identify a gang illegally manufacturing weapons. They're cracking down on illegal street racing. They're distributing gun locks to families in a bid to prevent child deaths. Now, I'm fine with that. If you're going to provide the means for people to safely secure their firearms when either they're not around or maybe they just don't have them in their person and they want to keep their kids from accessing them, Obviously, these locks can be easily busted and broken into, but it keeps kids from accidentally stumbling upon them saying, "What's that?" and accidentally hurting someone. And I know that might sound like a bit of a hyperbole, but that happens, and it happens often. And I think it's something that if you have kids or are going to have kids around the home, you should consider how you're going to secure your firearm so that they can't accidentally hurt themselves. So this is one thing I'm actually fine with. They're also stepping up arrests of those who illegally carry concealed firearms. This is my favorite part, because when they mention this exact action several times throughout the article, and it's just the fact that someone was unlawfully carrying a firearm concealed. Now, permits do not make you a good or a bad person. Having one and carrying one does not make you a better person than someone who either can't acquire for whatever means that it is, and chooses to carry one unlawfully or illegally. So are these police saying that these arrests have been averaging 60 to 100 a week, which is an increase of 100% over the previous year? Now, they're saying that in 2020, they saw a 60 to 100 per week incidents of someone illegally carrying a firearm without a permit, and that was a 100% increase over the previous year. Do you think the reason that many people might be carrying a firearm is because of some of the violence going on, and maybe within the later acknowledged backlog and inability to legally conceal carry a firearm, people are choosing to illegally carry a firearm? I don't know. You tell me. According to Chief Craig, that's the place to start. Because if police don't crack down on smaller crimes and on those who are legally prohibited from carrying, then criminals feel they can get away with even more crime. If we don't punish you for wanting to protect yourself, the gangs might feel empowered. Yep, that sounds like what that meant to me. So should they be going after those big criminals, or should they be going after the person who happens to have a little 32 ACP in their purse because they want to protect themselves in Detroit? Again, you tell me. The key is to focus on individuals illegally carrying guns, Craig told America's First Freedom. Doing that, you can reduce the incidence of gun violence because they're the ones committing the acts of violence. Cool. According to the chief, the vast majority of illegal guns they're taking from people, most of these are handguns, were illegally acquired by theft or straw purchase. So this is when they talk about how theft and straw purchase are going to be the main way that they get a hold of firearms, which is interesting to note because you didn't see him mention ghost guns here. So I don't know, maybe it's not that big of a deal. That one reason they're focusing on more on the perpetrators, not the people's guns. Criminals are always going to be able to get access to guns, Craig said. They aren't law-abiding, they're not following the law anymore, so more gun laws don't mean reduced violence. What we need to do is focus in on our most violent individuals. Well, he's saying here we need to focus on our most violent individuals, but he's saying here the key is to focus on individuals illegally carrying guns. Which is it? I don't know. Craig said much of Detroit has been spared the rhetoric about defunding the police, but he criticized national voices, and it goes on to talk about how the defunding the police movement is stupid and how they were saying that the entire institution should be dismantled, which is great. Yeah, let's completely let a place that's already unsafe to be, let's make it so there are no police whatsoever. And then also, let's make sure that nobody can have a gun at all. Make sure nobody can carry a gun if they do manage to get a gun. And then let's not have anyone with a gun to respond to the crimes. Good idea. He also took issue with the White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki claimed that the U.S. has a gun problem. No, he responded, we have a criminal problem. Why do we blame it on guns? We need to blame it on criminals. See, the thing about this article with the NRA posting it and talking about it in the way that they do, they're really hyping this guy up and really saying this is a great guy, when multiple times they have quoted him on saying that we need to focus on enforcing gun control. So why is the NRA acting like this guy can do no harm? It goes on to then say how with the layoffs that they've been experiencing, prosecutors say that sometimes it's a question of triage. Not only have Wayne County prosecutors lost some 50 attorneys during the pandemic, but they've also inundated by cases they think are a higher priority than gun charges. Now, then he goes on to say, I'm not saying these are cases we should not pay attention to. They are, Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy told the Detroit News. But when we look at a scale with homicides, sexual assaults, armed robberies, child abuse, elder abuse, domestic violence, carjackings, and we have to look at some of our major cases, we have to figure out how we are going to try to try all of these cases. That's a good point. Crimes, where there is an actual victim, are being their priority. But the chief is unhappy with that. Now, to fix this, they're creating a special court docket to clear a backlog of concealed weapons arrests that is thousands deep and growing. We've never really seen this amount of gun cases in our court, William McConico, the judge for the 36th District who's presiding over the docket, told the press. We don't want cases to languish behind other cases. The NRA here is actively saying that they are supporting The NRA here is actively encouraging and supporting the creation of a special court docket to charge people who are concealed carrying a firearm. Matthew Schneider, the former U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan who oversaw the project, bulked up the department during his tenure by hiring 40 assistant U.S. attorneys and overseeing federal prosecutions. He told the ATF that federal prosecutors often have more resources and can obtain harsher penalties for federal violations, but he also agrees that there's some degree of futility in thinking gun laws will prevent crime. I don't think more laws are the solution. The criminals aren't going to follow these laws. They buy guns on the street. I know gangs that exchange guns, commit a crime, and then ship a gun to another location. These people aren't going through the proper channels at all. It's an underground market. You can pass any number of laws and people are still going to break them. Gun shows aren't the problem, he says. I've prosecuted hundreds of thousands of gun crimes and supervised thousands more. I've never in my career as a prosecutor heard of a case of a defendant that got his gun from a gun show. That's just not where the guns come from. That's a good point. That's something really interesting to hear. So I'm just kind of surprised by that. I'm not saying that I think that the gun show loophole is a real thing, but I'm surprised that they're not getting them from private sales that could potentially happen at a gun show if they were legally able to happen in that state that they were in. So that's interesting to me. He shares the concern about not locking up violent offenders. There's a shift in focus, he says, where people charged with gun crimes were taken off the street and put in prison so they weren't a danger to the community. The focus now seems to not be on incarceration. The problem is there are dangerous people who need to be off the streets. I agree. And people that commit violent crimes, people who commit a crime and create a victim, should be punished for those crimes, and dangerous people who do dangerous things and hurt people should be locked away. But someone just wanting to carry a firearm for self-protection, I don't think that they should be punished for that. Motor City hasn't always done things perfectly. Gun owners have had to file suit due to prolonged delays with concealed pistol license processing. Privacy advocates are concerned the ShotSpotter devices and social media monitoring are too invasive, and critics note the department has a controversial policy of arresting everyone in a car once an illegal gun is found. It's one of the many fines the department and Chief Craig have had to walk between enforcement, privacy, and security. Oh, I don't think Craig has any problem enforcing all of these laws. I think he is more than happy to punish people for being unable to legally obtain a concealed pistol license, which they are acknowledging here have delays. I think he's totally fine with that, and I think that he would be totally fine with people being unable to defend themselves because they were illegally carrying a firearm. Now, all in all, this article, I think, had a lot of great points and some information that I didn't know before. But when you look at what it's really recommending, the NRA is encouraging people to be put in jail by propping this guy up as a hero for arresting a double the amount of people the year before for concealed carrying a firearm, something you would think the National Rifle Association, an organization who fights for constitutional carry, would be against. But it seems as if they're supporting this. Let me know what you guys think down below. You all know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace. Oh boy, it is a sweaty day today. I just finished up at the gym, and now I had to record a video real quick, got to edit it super fast, and then I am going to be going line dancing. I don't know how I got signed up to do this, but I am going to be going and doing that. I hope you all take some time to enjoy your day, enjoy your life. The world's a crazy place right now, but if you can't control the certain crazy things that are going on, maybe it's worth remembering the good things that are going on and enjoy what you can while you can.